Take a good look at this dude. That's the bones of a megalania, or Varanus priscus if you're nasty. This ancestor of the Komodo dragon could grow up to 18 feet in length and weigh over 1,300 pounds. And not only was this animal a ferocious predator, but apparently they could easily traverse stairs. So don't think you're just gonna hide in the cellar. Native to Australia, the megalania was around a lot closer to our time than a lot of the animals we're gonna talk about, going extinct only around 50,000 years ago. In fact, they were around when the first indigenous settlers of Australia were around. And because there was nothing tastier than a thick fillet of megalania with a baked potato and nice salad, it's believed that humans likely accelerated their disappearance. Oh, don't act all surprised, it's kind of what we humans do. The other thing humans do is make up stories about fierce mythical creatures in order to scare their children into eating their vegetables, or going to bed when they're supposed to. And one of the most enduring myths in this part of Australia was that of the Wowie. He allegedly was about 20 feet long with a huge frog-shaped head and 6 powerful legs. Other than the 6 legs, this description seems to fit the megalania to a T. My guess is when one of those bastards was chasing you down the stairs, it probably seemed like they had 6 legs. And not like they needed it, but they had a secret weapon. Really? Just look at those teeth. Did they need a secret weapon? So, what was this weapon? Well, the megalania was venomous. Similar to the Komodo dragon and the Nile monitor, it secreted a hemotoxin. And that's a fancy way of saying it thinned your blood and kept it from coagulating. That means you could easily bleed out from a single bite. Imagine that, you tangle with one of these lizards on steroids, and you manage to get away with just a single bite. But instead of a trip to the emergency room to get a few stitches, you bleed out before the animal gets there. Of course, it wasn't helped by the fact that 50,000 years ago in Aboriginal Australia, ambulance response time was notoriously bad. We'll head to what is now South America for our next creature from hell. Meet the Forest Rekidae. As you can see, these delightful creatures, who have the whimsical name of terror birds, have the head of Toucan Sam on the back end of a 5-day meth binge, and the body of an ostrich that's doing 25 to life and works out in the cell block D weight room every day. They lived roughly 60 million years ago, stood about 8 feet tall, and weighed in at about 800 pounds. For context, that makes them about the size of a polar bear. They're generally regarded as the first apex predators, predating Randy Orton by several decades. Although they were flightless birds, don't feel sorry for them. After all, I'll bet some of your best friends are flightless. But what they lacked in flight, they made up for in many other ways. For starters, they were fast. Like really fast. With a top speed of 31 miles per hour, not only were they faster than their prey, but they were faster than the 28 miles per hour recorded by the fastest human ever, Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt. For women, it was even worse news, since the fastest time by a female was 21 miles per hour by Sha'Carri Richardson. To paraphrase the old saying, you don't have to be faster than the Forest Rekidae, you just have to be faster than Sha'Carri Richardson. Good luck with that. Once they caught you, they had several wacky methods at their disposal to ensure your demise. They could crack your skull with their super powerful beaks. They could use that same beak to rip your flesh from your bones. Or they could just tear you to shreds with the sharp talons on their feet. But their most insidious method was to knock on your door and tell you all about being a Jehovah's Witness for several hours, until you couldn't take it anymore and ultimately just killed yourself. Over the millions of years they were around, they eventually migrated to North America. In particular, Florida and Texas. Apparently, the US has always had issues at the southern border. This makes the Forest Rakids the only known large South American predator to migrate north in the Great American Interchange, that followed the formation of the Isthmus of Panama land bridge. And that makes sense, because who's going to tell them to leave? You want to do it? Because I know I don't. Now we're off to southern China to check out the Gigantopithecus, Latin for great ape. It was discovered in 1935 by anthropologist Ralph von Koenigswald, who, despite being a top-notch anthropologist, was terrible at coming up with names. You think I'm kidding? The first 2 names he came up with were the Bigosaurus and Whopperpotamus. The ape-like creatures stood 10 feet tall, with a wingspan of up to 12 feet. Although they were herbivores and not predatory by nature, they were absolute terrors on the glass and led the league in rebounds for over 700,000 years. Suck it, Dennis Rodman. Since they were banned from having all the local salad bars, their diet mainly consisted of fruit, leaves, and other forest plants. And just how exactly do we know they had a vegan diet? In the same way we know who the vegans are today. They never shut up about it. And because Bigfoot researcher is a thing, there's a theory that has developed called the Bigfoot Gigantohypothesis. It states that instead of going extinct several 100,000 years ago, they're actually still alive and roaming the forests of the Pacific Northwest. A couple of problems with this theory. First, can anyone just declare themselves a Bigfoot expert? I mean, since there's never been a body found or legitimate video taken, How exactly does that work? Could I just declare myself a leprechaun inspector or professor of unicorns? So many questions. Secondly, every theory about their size has been extrapolated based on teeth and upper jawbones that have been discovered. Yeah, there's never been any sort of body discovered. No femurs, no skulls, no identifiers like a passport or Blockbuster video card. And because molar size and total body weight don't always correlate, it could have had a tiny body and huge skull, much like Pumpkinhead. How'd that work exactly? Did they hire a police sketch artist, show him a few teeth and a shard of jawbone, and say, get to work? Inquiring minds and the 3 Bigfoot researchers in the world want to know. Before killer whales, polar bears, sharks, and tyrannosaurs, the world's top predator was a bizarre animal that was basically a giant shrimp. It was called the Anomalocaris, a word from the Greeks meaning tastes great with cocktail sauce. Of course, that's not true, since cocktail sauce wasn't invented until the late Proterozoic period. It was actually Greek for unusual shrimp, and shrimp don't get a lot more unusual than this dude. Measuring over 6 feet in length, it had a body made up of overlapping plates, huge spiked arms, and stalked eyes made up of 16,000 individual lenses. Its undulating swimming motion made it very fast, and it would stalk its prey, quickly overtake them, and use its front teeth to hold the victim in place while it ripped into it with its mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. I'm sorry, did I forget to mention the deadly teeth? My bad. Although seriously, what did you think was gonna happen? Was the prey down there thinking, oh, here comes that weird-ass shrimp thing swimming towards me at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'll bet he just wants to give me a kiss. But life wasn't all fast swimming and snacks for the Anomalocaris. Just like all creatures, they had to endure various challenges in everyday life. For example, if one of your shrimp kids needed glasses, the money spent on 16,000 pairs of spectacles could financially break a shrimp family and leave them in debt for generations. And before you ask, yes, they tried contact lenses. Throughout this list, you'll hear a lot of adjectives like terrifying, scary, murderous, and predatory, but the Anomalocaris is the only creature on this list that will be described as delicious. Having said that, it did cause some confusion at local restaurants when someone would ask how many shrimp were on the shrimp po' boy, and the server would say, just one. Luckily, the customers always had a big laugh when they found out just how gigantic the shrimp was. However, many times they'd already submitted their Yelp review trashing the restaurant and couldn't delete it. Unfortunate. Next on the list is the only one of these creatures you'll find in the Guinness Book of World Records. The Arthropleura armata holds the record for the largest land-based invertebrate, animal without a backbone, ever, barely edging out my ex-wife. The Arthropleura, Greek for jointed ribs, lived in what is now Europe and North America around 345 to 290 million years ago. It was easy to tell if they were European or North American because all the European ones were kind of dickish whenever you asked them for directions, especially if you did it in English. At 8.5 feet long, this handsome devil had between 32 and 64 pairs of 32 and 64 jointed legs, and its body was covered with armor plates. Technically, they were covered with 4 different kinds of plates. Don't worry about the different kinds of plates, it won't be on the final. Originally, Arthropleura was thought to be an active predator, and reconstructions of its likely appearance in life depicted it as a giant centipede-like creature because, as you'll recall from that science class where you got a pity D, centipedes are carnivorous. But after later investigating, scientists have concluded that it was more likely to have been a millipede. And, like millipedes, they were... anyone? Bueller. That's right, they were herbivores. Seriously, if you knew the answer, log off the computer right now, and go outside and touch some grass. I'm not kidding, no one at the party wants to be cornered by the guy who just wants to tell you fun facts about extinct caterpillars all night. They maybe weren't as terrifying as some of the other animals in this video, but they were excellent bait when you wanted to catch the really big fish. And what kind of fish would you be catching with an 8-foot millipede? Glad you asked. Grab your rod and reel and make sure you pack a few bobbers the size of beach balls because we're going fishing for the Dunkleosteus. The Dunkleosteus, known for its ferocity and love of glazed donuts, lived approximately 370 million years ago in what is now North America and Europe. The first fossil was discovered on the shore of Lake Erie, just west of Cleveland. Just in case you were looking for another reason to visit Cleveland, you can add that to your list. This was not a fish you wanted to mess with. The sketches of this fish looked like someone took a great white shark's body and stuck a bulldog's head on it. And just for grins, cause you know God's funny like that, he had a mouthful of sharp teeth and 2 prominent front teeth, making him look like a terrifying bulldog/beaver/shark combo. Scientists have been puzzled by the 2 front teeth, but the working theory is they used them to open beer cans since the church key wouldn't be invented for several million years. This was another apex predator of its time, meaning it could eat any animal it wanted and had very few predators. It came with a lot of standard features, including bony plates in the jaws which were sculpted into fangs and long slicing edges. The upper and lower jaws would also shear against one another, causing them to self-sharpen. This feature came in handy when they were looking to quickly dispatch a victim or carve a Thanksgiving turkey. In addition, they were able to open and close their jaws really fast. So fast that Dunkleosteus could make a suction when opening, sucking prey into them. These guys weren't especially particular about their diets, and they could suck in and bite straight through any animal alive at that time, from the thick-shelled ammonites to other placoderms with body armor. A study in 2016 found scrape and puncture marks on other Dunkleosteus armor that were made by larger Dunkleosteus. So, if you're looking for a cannibalistic shark/bulldog/beaver fish that could suck a golf ball through a garden hose, the Dunkleosteus checks every one of your slightly disturbing boxes. Everybody has those relatives they don't like to talk about. For ticks, spiders, and lobsters, that black sheep relative was the Pentacopterus. It was named after Pentaconter, one of the first Greek galley-style warships. And, as you might suspect, you don't name something after a Greek warship if it's not built like a Greek warship. After all, there's no breed of bunny called the USS Constitution. Although there is a pastry named the Bismarck, so maybe this analogy isn't as strong as I thought. The first Pentacopterus was discovered in a fossil bed under the Upper Iowa River near Decorah, Iowa. This is an area of Iowa that's at least 50 miles from any town you've ever heard of. Back in the day, all of Iowa was pretty much a lake, and it was home to all sorts of creatures besides the Pentacopterus. The lake also featured brachiopods, trilobites, and, like every lake in the world, boat gas prices that are $2 higher than on land. Imagine a scorpion with a paddle-shaped body that was designed for swimming. Got that picture in your brain? Great. Now imagine that bastard is the size of Tom Cruise. The good news is, the tail was just for show, and unlike their landlocked offspring, they didn't actually have a stinger. Instead, the tail was used for balance and swimming, and of course, impressing the ladies. But what they lacked in stingy tails, they made up for with a dozen claw arms that they used to capture their prey, and then a short time later, exactly how long depending on their mood, they would use those claws to rip that prey to more manageable bite-sized pieces. As you may have guessed by now, this was another apex predator, as they pretty much ruled the state of Iowa, much like Caitlin Clark does today. Next up is probably the most ridiculous animal on our list. Say hello to the Helicoprion. This shark-like fish was named after the Greek word helios, meaning spiral, and prion, meaning saw. That's right, because rows of teeth were so Gellian period. This handsome fellow had a set of spiral teeth on the bottom. This made them an even more efficient killing machine. Plus, it left a much cooler looking bite mark on your surfboard with a lot less jagged edges. Although Helicoprion fossils have been found throughout the world, over half of them have been discovered in Idaho, which proves one thing: Idaho used to be a lot more exciting. They could get up to be 40 feet long and weighed in at close to a ton. That's roughly the size of 2 great white sharks. It also made one of the largest cartilaginous fish ever. In case you're taking notes, cartilaginous means its spine is made of cartilage, not bone. Present day examples include sharks, rays, and skates. There was no mention if the skates were ice or roller. Their powerful jaws could quickly slice their prey neatly in half, which meant the last thing to go through the mind of their victims was, hey, that's weird, I can't feel my legs. Oh crap. Of course, you might be wondering how exactly it worked, since you had a vertical buzzsaw for teeth. Well, like that drunk dude at the bar who just won't shut up, their mouths are always open. Their bodies were covered with hard protective shells, which really seemed like overkill. Seriously, did 40-foot sharks with buzzsaw teeth get hassled a lot? Something tells me taunting wasn't a big problem for our old pal the Helicoprion. Did you think we saved the best for last? Well, I don't know about the best, but we definitely saved the cringiest for last. First, a little content warning. If your favorite movie is Ratatouille, you might just want to go ahead and skip to the end of the video. Okay, you're still here? Good. Because it's now time to meet the Phoberomus pattersoni. This is an extinct rodent who was nicknamed Ratzilla. It lived in the ancient Orinoco River Delta in Venezuela around 8 million years ago, and could grow in size to be over 8 feet long and weigh up to 1,700 pounds. It was the second largest of the roughly 7 species of its genus, with the largest of course being Chuck E. Cheese. Even though Ratzilla was an herbivore, it doesn't mean they weren't terrifying. Seriously, if you saw one of these dudes coming at you downtown, at the very least you're gonna cross over, jaywalking be damned, and walk down the other side of the street. And just because they didn't eat meat, didn't mean they didn't have a mouthful of needle-like teeth. Plus, if they hadn't been able to eat a salad for like a week, are you totally sure they wouldn't just gnaw on a finger or two to hold them over? That's what I thought. Plus, the only reason they ate leaves and grass is they didn't have access to pizza. Because if the internet has taught us anything, it's that rats love pizza. Although, even if the rat is 8 feet long, he better not get between a New Yorker and a slice. Also on the list of things a giant rat shouldn't do in New York are talking crap about the Yankees or making eye contact on the subway. Also, hey, subscribe. Click this video over here that YouTube thinks you'll like, and subscribe.